So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We are here because we think that it's very important to learn from each other's experience. And we had an amazing opportunity. There's a book called Science Wednesday, which is actually named after an educational program that was held in Habibi.Works in Ioannina, next to a refugee accommodation site in Katsikas. And this book we have loved very much because it describes how some teachers can design a program that can help students spark their curiosity, make a safe space for them, and cultivate critical thinking among the other skills. So we have with us the writers and the teachers, Joram, Medina, Elske, Voermans. I hope I said it right.
That's all right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure Tsukalaki is not very easy to. So thank you for coming. The floor is yours. And thank you so much for your work. And thank you for writing this book. And it means a lot for many teachers. And also it gives incentive to teachers to also keep notes after what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So important, and usually we don't have time, but it can help others and also help us become better teachers. So it's amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Katerina, as well. And thank you to Science United Project for giving us the stage today to talk about our experience. And we are going to talk about what we talk in the book, but maybe the first thing we should do is to introduce ourselves while Elske set up the slideshow.
I think it's good. You can see it, right?
Okay, yes, I can see it.
Wonderful.
So I am Joram. I am a mathematician first, and then I became a math teacher. Not actually until I started Science Wednesday. Like I became a teacher around the time when I started designing Science Wednesday. I'm Spanish. And at some point, right before studying education, I traveled to Greece in a really random way and found myself in Habibi.Works, the place that we are going to also introduce in a bit. And I loved the space, and I started working there for some weeks. That turned into some years. And there I met Elske, who can introduce herself, maybe.
I can. Yeah, I'm Elske. I'm from the Netherlands. I have done interdisciplinary studies as my bachelor. So in my bachelor, I got acquainted with a lot of different fields of science. So mostly like more like the biology, physics, mathematics, these kind of topics, but then everything a little bit. So I've always had an interest in science. And then I went to Habibi.Works. I think it was in 2017,
18?
Something like that. Anyway, something like that. And I've been there for about 3 years. And yeah, Joram and I set up this project, which we called Science Wednesday. Because
even though it didn't happen on Wednesdays.
The first one probably happened on a Wednesday, and after that we changed, but we kept the name.
Yeah, so maybe, I mean, you can also introduce Habibi.Works as a project.
Yeah, so Habibi.Works is situated in the north of Greece, at Katsikas, which is close to Ioannina. And it's a project where there's different workshops. So it's a makerspace, and there's different workshops that people from the refugee accommodations nearby, but also from the local people living there, they can use the workshops for free. And it's things like a wood workshop, a sewing atelier, a metal workshop, and there's different aims to it, or results of it, I think, that people use it for. So it's partly to make the things that they need, and that's a lot what we see in the camp. The camp is really close by, Camp Katsikas. It's well, a few hundred meters. It's literally on the opposite side of the street. And whenever there's a new group of people coming in, you could also clearly see, okay, what do people need? Because a lot of people would make, for example, shoe shelves, because that's something that they actually needed and was not provided. So that's what people used Habibi.Works for, but also for developing their skills, learning new skills, meeting each other. It's really a community space where people also have the chance to be out of the camp, but also, yeah, meet each other in a very different setting, which was much more, I think, based on like mutual inspiration and support. So yeah,
and it was also a first
wonderful
step towards joining into like European society as well, because in camp you are a little bit within a small community that it's still just like people coming as refugees. While
isolated.
there, they would interact with the people working there, with people coming from other camps, from local Greeks who could also use the space.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically a space where a lot of different things happened, and there was always space for a new project, which was one of the things I really loved about it.
And that we took advantage of.
We took advantage of that. Just before we moved to what Science Wednesday is, here's also another, this is Camp Katsikas. So that was the camp that is really next to Habibi.Works, but there were a couple of other refugee accommodations, either within the city or camps that were a little bit further away. And people would also come from those camps by bus. Yeah, so that's a little bit of context.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Elske, did my internet cracked for a second? I think I was off for a couple of seconds. But I think I caught up with you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so yeah, we were working in Habibi.Works as a maker space. We both had, let's say, a job in some of the working areas. I was working in the laser cutter and in the IT area. Elske was working with the bikes. But there, as Elske has said, there were so many possibilities and so many projects that could be carried on that at some point we sat down and thought, well, we love science. We have so many tools here that we can use, and we have teenagers coming here every day because they don't have school. Education is not being provided for them. They are doing nothing, just being here, hanging around and playing with their phone. So maybe let's try and provide some kind of practical education for them. And that's how Science Wednesday was born.
Yes. Yeah, and also I think there were quite a lot of youngsters, teenagers that were actually really interested, but that didn't really have the opportunity to, well, there was no formal education at that point yet for teenagers. And I think they needed a little push some of them at least needed a little push to really dive into it, because it's still easier to grab your phone and make use of the internet in that way, basically. So
yeah, and it's also not just teenagers, like everybody, I think, even like us, if we just have nothing to do and nobody pushing us to do something, we would just lay around.
Yeah, so we tried to create something that had a bit of a clear format, that the students also knew what they could expect, and that they had some routine in their day-to-day lives.
Day-to-day.
So I think we can go to the objectives with that.
So we began doing some experiments every Wednesday, and that's why it was called Science Wednesday. And with that, we tried to catch the eye of some of the students, see what they were interested in, see who could actually join. And after we had some idea, we just sat down and decided, okay, we need to find out what exactly we want to do. We need to make something that goes towards those objectives. Sorry for my English. So we came up with these core objectives for our program that you can see in the screen. And well, I can read them. Creating a safe space was the first and most important thing for us, because we wanted them to feel welcome in our class, that everybody would feel right there, that everybody would treat each other in a positive way, encouraging positive interactions, of course, and also improving their self-esteem through learning, like giving them the idea that they could learn, that they had the skills needed to learn, that they didn't have the opportunity to go to school, but that didn't mean that they were not able to actually learn something and become something in the future if they want to. Then also training soft skills that a lot of times are trained in school, even if they are not a specific subject, like team working, researching for information on the internet, any of those kind of things. But also, if you are not in a school, sometimes it's also difficult to train. Then sparking their curiosity, so they would actually pursue in the future maybe higher education, or just check their phone and look for apps for something interesting instead of just being playing PUBG. Then also train their critical thinking, because we think it's a very important skill to have, not only if you are working in science, but in your normal life. And finally, making science accessible. That's why we also chose science, to make them realize that science is not something very difficult that was out of their reach, but that they could actually one day, if they want to, sit, study science, become scientists, if that was what they wanted to do, even if their situation at that very moment was not the most positive for it.
Yeah, so basically we try to create an environment to support all of these core objectives, and we used science as a base for that, and also the scientific method. If you talk about, for example, critical thinking, we would use the scientific method of testing the statements that you hear, and I think that's something that they can actually use whenever, because there's a lot of information these days that you can find everywhere, but not everything is actually correct. So giving them the tools to find out what is true, what is not, was also part of this. And as you can see, all of these objectives, we don't have any objectives that say you now need to know all the, I don't know, whatever, like
reaching this level of knowledge about chemistry. We would teach chemistry at some point, for example, but our aim would never be to test them and realize and make sure that they knew how to formulate an inorganic compound, but for them to actually sit there, try, learn how to look for the information, check the information is right, get some small ideas about chemistry, but whether they became masters or not on it, it was not the main point.
No, it was much more about supporting their development and making sure that they could later on find that knowledge themselves, rather than us giving them that knowledge. So I think we can go to the next slide. Yes.
So yeah,
which
we
is
chose science.
Yeah, why did we choose science? Of everything that we could have chosen.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, obviously we both really liked science, so that was not a small aspect in choosing.
Yeah, but we need that reason to actually for us to choose it, but apart from us liking it.
Yeah, apart from us liking it, what we really tried to also show to the students was that science is not something very abstract. And I think science is very often pictured as something that is abstract, that's only for very smart people to understand. And we kind of wanted to break that prejudice, because actually science is very relatable, because everything around us is science. So if you talk about science, it's also about, why does this flower blossom, or what is a rainbow, for example? How does how does that work? So in that way, we wanted to show them, no, science is actually trying to explain the environment around us, so also around you. And this was one of the things that we always kept in mind whenever we would choose a topic.
because we haven't said it, but we would work around topics. Every month we would make a specific topic to work. For example, I don't know, light, and then we would have classes twice a week working on light, different parts of the topic. For example, colors or reflection. But the whole month would be revolving around lights. So we would choose, in this case, for example, this topic because we found it really relatable to the students. It's something the students know, it's something the students see. And we thought they would find it interesting and actually come to class looking forward to learn something about their day-to-day life.
Yeah, and in this we would always take the topic basically as a starting point. So we wouldn't, think of, okay, this topic will be chemistry and then talk about atoms or whatever. We would take a topic and then whatever discipline would pop up to explain that topic we would use. So in that way, it was never, we always kept it really relatable because our starting point would be, what do you see? What do you feel? What, what do you hear? All the basically the senses, to explain their own environment.
And then every topic would be really interdisciplinary just because of that. We would never focus on subjects as schools do, but on the different branches of science that work towards explaining one specific phenomenon, in this case, light, for example.
Yeah. It was actually quite interesting because this was our starting point. We wanted to make it relatable and basically show that it is not abstract, but obviously sometimes some things are more difficult to understand than others, and there are things in science that you cannot exactly see. Like if you talk about photons in the topic of light, those you cannot see. So you need to find, first of all, you need to find ways to explain that, and we always try to make those exercises very practical. So if you talk about photons, we would, for example, use bulbs and then trying to get visual and let them sort of see how it works. But still, sometimes for us, it was very surprising to see what they very quickly understood. And sometimes those are things that we thought would be very abstract. And then other things that we thought, okay, well, this is a fairly simple equation. It would be very difficult for them to understand. So we had that in the topic of light as well. Joram, you can maybe explain the example.
It's my turn again, but I cannot hear you.
Oh, you cannot hear us?
If the rest can hear you, it's fine, because I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Katarina, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Joram, your sound was a little, but now it's back.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, you're back.
You're back.
Yes.
Gods of internet, help us.
Yeah, keep us safe. I was talking about the example of light where we thought like, well, basically I can explain what happened. We were talking about photons of light, and we thought, okay, it would be very difficult for them to understand that if something's transparent, they go through something.
Because if you physically throw a ball, the ball will never go through. So we thought, okay, this is not really relatable to their normal life, so this will probably be something really difficult for them to grasp. But then we didn't have to explain anything. They came up with the idea the moment we talk about light being an array of photons. It was done.
Yeah, very, very easily understood. And then we were talking about the speed of light, and obviously it's a very big number. So we kind of thought that would maybe be a little bit difficult, but it turned out to be very difficult for them to understand how to calculate the speed of light and how to calculate how long something would take, how long the light, for example, from the sun would take to get to the Earth. Whereas we thought,
things
okay,
like the fact of just them to understand, or just to grasp that if you are walking at, I don't know, 100 meters a second, and you have to walk more than 100 meters, you will take longer than a second. That was impossible for them to grasp. And we thought that would be really easy because it's something that you can work with physically. So yeah, sometimes it was really, really difficult for us to assess which things would be really relatable and easy for them to understand and which wouldn't. And that would,
and there it was also interesting to see that we are obviously also not completely like we're also subjective in assessing this because we have our own background and we're very much used to using, you know, mathematics or equations or whatever from quite a young age. You would learn that already. So and then you go into your studies. So yeah, we have our own background in that, which was very different from their background, or at least from the background of some of our students. And there you could easily see, okay, actually, and it makes sense now you think of it, yeah, mathematics is much more abstract than physics sometimes. But at that moment, we didn't really realize it. And it was also interesting to see that the students that finished high school, they actually understood that assignment, whereas the ones that didn't understood the photon part because somehow they could relate to it, but the mathematics was much more difficult for them to grasp. So yeah, this was something that obviously we also ran into during the program, that sometimes we thought of something and then we tried it out and we gave a class and it didn't always work. So we would take that into account in our next class, and it was really learning by doing. I think we lost Joram, unfortunately. He will probably come back.
He
said he's moving to another room.
Yeah,
Okay.
he changed his room because the internet is not good at that room. Science can explain that, and we can perform some tests and you know, research, do some research on why. But now there he is.
Oh, there he is. You're back, Joram. No, maybe not. Can you hear us? No,
Yeah, I can see everything perfectly. I'm in Greece. I can see and hear perfectly.
That's good. I think then it's probably Joram's internet that is not serving him very well at this point. It's all right. I will just continue and he will catch up. He's very good at that. So we'll talk about a couple of things that we also mentioned in the book. Basically, in the book, we talk about different challenges that we faced whilst conducting the project. We don't have time to talk about all of them today, so we just selected some of them. We cannot hear you, Joram, if you were trying to say something.
Yes, I'm here. Just now
So yeah, the first thing that we'll talk about is can we serve all the students? And this is something that was quite challenging, and I'm not sure if we found a perfect solution to it, but we were working with a very diverse group of students. So some of the students that were in our class finished their high school, and others were illiterate. They basically never went to school. We wanted to keep Science Wednesday open to everyone, because one of the main things was also to just activate the students and to just get them interested. So initially our approach was to keep everything really practical, not use barely any language or any background knowledge, which worked for a couple of projects. And actually one of the projects that you see on this photo, they had to make a chain reaction. And for these kind of practical exercises, it was doable. But we also noticed that fairly quickly, if you want to go into a bit more depth, it can become challenging if you have a group that is so diverse. So we try to solve it in different ways, because we decided not to exclude anyone. So we basically, with the group that we had, we tried to make it work. we partly did that by matching, for example, if it came to language and to reading and writing, we would match someone who was illiterate to someone that was quite good at reading and writing, at least in their own language. And in that way, we could, for example, still have them do exercises about finding information online or writing down some small findings that they had, because there would be one person in the team that could actually write it down. And this actually worked quite well, because by having them support each other, you also create really this community feeling basically within the classroom, which was also one of the things that we really wanted to encourage. And another thing we did was sometimes defer the exercises based on the level of, for example, mathematics that some students would understand, because clearly if you've never been to school, even the most basic equations can be quite difficult to understand because you've never learned it. And we also didn't completely want to avoid them, because there were other students that, you know, could sort of use the challenge. So what we did was still focusing on the same topic, but making the exercise easier for some and more difficult for others, of whom we knew they knew more math, for example. So yeah, I think it worked quite well, but it was not always easy. And for every project, we again had to reevaluate, okay, what students do we have this time? And what do they need? What's their sort of their level? And sometimes it was also difficult to assess what people's level of understanding was, because I think, at least from my perspective, I'm very much used to, you know, all children basically going to school. So you would assume that if children reach a certain age and they have a certain level of intelligence, they can also read and write. But obviously, if you have students that have never gone to school, they could still be very smart, because some of them were super clever, like very bright students. But if you've never learned it, you don't know. So for us, it was not always very clear who would understand and who would not. So this is also something we learned along the way, and we sort of learned what to observe and how to assess what the students needed.
I think I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, I had to move to the living room because my room was not liking it now.
Ah, you're there. Wonderful. Do you want
So,
to
yes,
add anything, or do you want to add anything to this, or shall I move to
No,
the
I
next
was
one?
like just checking. You have been talking about the dealing with backgrounds,
Yeah. I can
and
go to-
also like I don't know if you mentioned how difficult it is also to assess it,
Yeah.
because the
I
students
did.
sometimes don't even tell you. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. And then I might talk about another topic that we found interesting in this context, and that is commitment. Our program was a program that was voluntary, so students didn't have to come if they didn't want to. Like, we would not give them a certification or anything. So they just came because they wanted to. And that's something that has advantages and disadvantages. Like, people that come because they want to be in the class, they will be paying attention, they will be working. But also, if Sunday they don't feel like coming, they will not come, because there is nothing that pushes them to do it. So to prevent that, because we did want to build a program where commitment was needed, we wanted also to have them building a routine on their lives, because as we mentioned before, they were doing nothing. They were not attending school. They had no routines on their lives. That's not only for teenagers. It was also the case for a lot of adults that would arrive in Habibi.Works on a Friday, saying they had an appointment in the wood workshop on Monday, but they didn't even know what day it was. So we wanted for them to build a small routine, at least for the program. And the things we did in this direction was, to begin with, being very, very strict with our rules. We had 2 classes a week, and students had to come. If they didn't come to a class with no reason, they would be out of this cycle, like for this month. They could join next month for sure, but for this one, they would be out. Unless there was a reason, like they were going to the hospital, they had an interview for their refugee status or whatever, like something that we consider important. But otherwise, they would be out. And why would it be important for them not to be out? Because as a second way to make them committed, we also promised them a trip, a field trip after every cycle, in case they passed an exam. The exams were always small, like activities like a treasure hunt, escape room, something fun for them to test their knowledge. They always passed. But yeah, in case they wouldn't pass the exam, that would not happen, and they hadn't come to the class, they could not come to the trip. And yes, making the trip existing, we actually kind of forced many of the students to come for the whole month. And that sometimes also have them finding motivation for coming on their own, because maybe the first classes were not the things they were looking for, and they would think of dropping out. They didn't because of the trip, and then the 4th class, the 5th class, was something that they actually liked, and then something clicked with them, and they decided to keep on coming. So we think for us, those 2 things work very well. For like actually at some point, they would not know what day it was, but they knew at Tuesday at 4 to be at Habibi.Works.
Yeah. Yeah, and the boundaries were in a way that, like the clear boundaries that we set were in a way also, I think, quite comforting for them, because they knew what they could expect. And we were quite strict, but you know, if there was a valid reason, even if it sometimes if it was the 3rd time, but because of a doctor's appointment or whatever, we would sometimes say, okay, you know, there's this little sort of homework assignment that you can do, and then we can still, you know, allow you in. So yeah, I think the combination of being flexible but also very clear worked very well.
Yeah, they also took ownership of those rules really quickly. And at some point, if a student was not there, they were like, Joram, Elske, this guy is not here, so he cannot come to the trip.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
let us decide on that. But yeah, you know the rules, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then also, if you want to tell it, Elske, even if it is a small spoiler from the book, there were even some cases around the trip with some students that were kind of funny. Like, for example, we had this student who was the small brother of another student who was actually coming already. We invited him to come several times, but he would never want to come. He would just laugh at our faces, saying that he didn't like school at all. Then we took his brother to the beach. So then he decided that the project was not that bad and he wanted to join. He kept
Was
on
worth
coming.
it.
Yeah. He kept on coming for most of the project. It was the space one, which one was of the most, like, let's say, difficult ones. But there he was, until he missed a couple of classes just because he was napping. At the very end, we were very sad about that. But he appeared there the day of the exam, and we told him that the rules were clear, that it was not fair for the rest of the students for us to allow him to come even if he passed the exam. He said it was fine. He did the exam anyway. He passed. He tried a little bit to come to the trip. We said no. It was fine.
And we actually, the trip was quite nice that we went on that time. It's actually the photo you see.
Yeah.
So we would go stargazing at one of the mountains close to the camp. It was quite nice, but he couldn't come.
He couldn't come. So then we actually thought he would just give up, but he came again, and this time he went through the whole thing, just looking forward at another trip somewhere cool for him. And then we went to university. He was not really impressed.
To the chemistry lab.
After all his work, he actually went to something educational. But well, I think he actually liked it.
He liked it. He liked everything anyway, but it was quite a funny anecdote, I think. Yeah.
Well, maybe to finish with the small topics, we could talk about the flow of students. I don't know if we have mentioned this already before in one of the death moments I had.
No, we
Okay,
haven't.
but for sure, if you are working in refugee contexts, you are also familiar with this. Uh, asylum seekers just arrived in camp and stay some time. Suddenly they leave when their cases move on. Then other people come and fill up the empty spaces. So the community there is in continuous changing, and so were our students. So we knew that we would start a month with a set of students, but we could not count on them for the next month. Some of them just because they didn't like the project, and that's completely fair. But some others because they might want to move somewhere else. And then there would be new students coming and who would like to join. So we had to build everything in a way that after every month, everything could be just reset and start from the beginning. But at the same point, that everybody that was coming for a long time could also still join and still enjoy and not get bored. So what we did was building every single project completely independent of the previous ones. So if we would talk about lights 1 month, then the next month we would talk about anatomy, for example, that has nothing to do with light. And we would not need any knowledge that was built before in order to join this one.
Yeah, and it was also, I think, always a little bit, it always gave me at least a little bit of anxiety at the first day of the cycle, because, well, at some point we had quite a steady group that we knew were still in camp, but sometimes literally half or our full class would have left, and we would not really know whether there would be anyone else when the next cycle would start.
It actually happened once that we had around 15, 13 people at the end of the cycle, and the next day we were 2.
Yeah, so it was also quite interesting for us, I think, but it really required a lot of flexibility, also because you had to get to know the students every time again. So yeah, I think it's really important to kind of understand where the students, what their background is, how they sort of work. So what kind of support they need. And we had to figure that out basically every month and a half. Yeah, because sometimes the group would be completely different. And also the group dynamic could be very different depending on the people who joined, because sometimes it was, a group of 5 friends with 2 others, which is a very different dynamic than if you have 7 individual people joining. So yeah, it was very interesting, sometimes also difficult, but something that we just had to deal with because of the context. Like, there was no way we could have done it in another way, I think, and still be open for new students and for everyone to join. Yeah. I think
with that, I think we can just move on to a last thing. There are still many other topics, some of them relatable to working in refugee contexts, some others for any kind of educational setting. You can find them all in the book. Maybe if you want to ask questions about one specific one later on, you can also do it and we can talk about that. But I think we've been talking about it for a long time. So let's just finish talking about the one last thing we wanted to say. That was the reason why this book is out, and why also the lesson plans that you can find for free, and we will give you the link after, are also available. And it's the fact that after every single class, we would sit down and have a feedback round to check what worked, what didn't work, what things we could have done differently, what we saw the students enjoyed, what they didn't really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was good for many reasons, because first of all, it basically gave us the opportunity to immediately adapt our plan, because usually when we would be doing one class, we would already kind of have a plan for the next one. But if we observed that something that we did in that class and something similar that we had planned for the next class, if it really didn't work, we would adapt it for the next class and skip it and think of something else. So it really built in this flexibility to immediately react to our observations. I think that was one thing.
Yeah, and actually there is the specific case of the speed of light class, where we thought it would be a really easy class. We would continue on some theory the day after. But then after the difficulties they had, we just sat down and said, okay, we cannot do that tomorrow. We have to do something fun, something quick. So we came up with some practical activities to check reflection with mirrors. And we just brought them back in track, like got them interested again. Their next class was much more smooth. So yeah, we had to be flexible and adapt to everything in every single moment. Yes, not also for the students to enjoy the next class, but also to keep them, because as we said, it was a voluntary thing, and we always had to be with an eye out to check what to do to keep them in, apart from the trip, of course.
Yeah, it was a very direct feedback, because if they would not show up, we knew that something went wrong. So that had its upsides as well. And doing this together, the two of us, also gave us this possibility to reflect. And I think it sort of not really forced that, but it made it much easier to really take the time and sit down to evaluate after every class. Because if you're teaching alone, I think that could be a bit more challenging. And of course, we both had different observations, so that helped. But also just really taking the time to do it. And I would really advise anyone to do it, even if you're alone, but maybe just brainstorm with someone else, just to tell what you observed. Because I think when you talk about it, you realize it in a different way somehow. So it's easier to take the learnings out of it.
And that was one of the biggest advantage of us working together. There were two people in the room looking things with two different eyes. So we would observe things in a completely different way and then give each other the feedback. And I think that really, really added to the classes that we prepared and the lesson plans that we prepared.
Yeah, I think that's about it for us. The book is available on Amazon, and we talk about many more different things. And the lesson plans are available for free on this link. And I think maybe, Joram, can you post it in the chat?
Yeah.
Yes, that would be very useful. I was about to look for the link, but thank you if you have it ready.
We just copy-pasted.
Yes, both links would be great. Thank you so much, Elske and Joram. It's a small glimpse on the book. It's a teaser for people to read the whole book. So Joram has wait, I will post it at the group. It was
one thing also about the lesson plans is we basically incorporated all our experiences in conducting these classes. So everything that we thought we could have done this differently, we have incorporated already in the lesson plans. But I think it could be really nice if people could also, I don't know, Katarina, if it can live somewhere where people can basically add their own comments, their feedback, or to have it kind of as a living document that people can learn from each other's experiences as well. That would be really great, because we've only done it once, and I think there's much more to learn.
That sounds great. I think we're trying to keep a community of teachers who share ideas, and that's the whole idea for the things we offer also at Science United Project. Is this is important for teachers to share experience. I don't know if someone will do the whole thing again, but it's a really valuable resource. Of course, there are some specific characteristics that might not be able to copy. Like you don't have Habibi.Works everywhere.
But then again, for example, Katrina, for every single class in the document, we set up what things you need, what things you would need to buy, and not always you need to buy things that are not that easy to find. So yeah, it's not something you really need Habibi.Works for.
Not for everything, at least.
No.
That's really important. It's true. You don't have to do everything.
No, you can just pick and match, basically. Yeah,
exactly. But there are so many ideas, like in refugee education context, that the students are constantly on the move. and you have to start again and also keep the students who are still there interested. That's a very important idea. Right now, there are, unfortunately, there are less and less teachers available for refugee students. There are almost the same teachers at the camps, but at the cities they're going to be less soon because UNICEF is making the program smaller. But there are still teachers in the camps, and I hope that they will stay there. And teenagers are always hard to reach, I think. And so a project-based learning program like yours gives this opportunity that you can complete a cycle, as you say, have a month with the students, they complete it, and also the fact that you incorporated the evaluation as a very freestyle and non-typical education evaluation with treasure hunting, challenges, and escape rooms. That was a group evaluation. It wasn't a singular for each person and somebody passed and somebody didn't. This is very interesting, and I think it's a really good practice to do, because evaluation is important, and sometimes I say it to myself because you evaluate your work mainly and your students' knowledge. So this way you become a better teacher, but it's very important because also every time the students are different, their needs are different, their background is different. As you said, it was hard to assess some children's skills. They were advanced in one skill and less advanced in other skills. Some didn't attend school ever. Others had finished high school. So you had many different speeds because exactly they were teenagers and young adults. So there was a even greater difference. If it were for younger children, you can start from scratch with everyone. If they were 7-year-olds, it's may easier. You start from the beginning. But there with teenagers, it's much more complex. So we have the link for the lesson plans at the group chat.
Yeah.
You can click, you can download the lesson plans and resources about keeping it alive. I don't know how we can do that, but we can think about it and having comments underneath. For now, we have the link at our website, at the Science United Festival website, which is for the teachers who participate as a resource. But there is no comment session. We can figure it out, though. We can figure it out.
I mean, as long as people can use it, it's fine. If people could
Yeah.
comment, it would be great. But
Yes, it's really really important to have access, though, and then it's free to use, and there are so many topics there, and many of these can be used in younger ages as well. Like there's not
yeah.
so much advanced mathematics. You can also
No,
add or remove mathematics, and it's really
and also we also included in the lesson plans all the knowledge that the teacher might need. Not only what the teacher would teach, but everything that they would need to be comfortable teaching the class, because we were not experts on any of those topics. So we also had to do the research.
that goes
So
for
as
every
you have all
teacher,
the
I
knowledge,
think.
you can also scale it to the students you have. Like you work with smaller kids, then you have all the knowledge, you just scale it to the level of the kids.
It's true. It's true. And I think, especially for the evaluation process, it's a really breakthrough for typical education. We don't do group evaluation. So I wanted to tell everyone, if you want to make questions, you can raise your hand. There is an icon at the I will add the spotlight as well. So there is an icon. There is a reaction that you can do. It's a raise your hand in Zoom. So
I think there are some people with their hands.
great. So yes, let's hear from Gift, and then from Joanne, Gift, you can open your microphone.
Hello, thank you very much. I really appreciate such an interesting write-up and great book. The way you composed everything was so interesting for me. And I want to ask something. So why did you do this boundary things? Why did you create boundaries for the refugees?
Why we were strict with the boundaries of
Yes,
when they could keep going to the class, you mean?
yes.
Yeah, so what we noticed is that a lot of the teenagers really didn't have a lot of routine. So one of our main aims was to really start building that routine. And we noticed that if you were very clear on this is what is expected from you, it would be much more likely that they would actually show up. And if you would be a bit more like, okay, you can come, but if you don't come, then you can come next time. Then it became something that was optional. And then the option of sleeping because you're a little bit tired would also be quite, interesting suddenly. Whereas when it was just like, no, this is, if you want to join, you join fully. They would overcome sort of their first urge to sleep and still get out of bed and come to the class.
We wanted them to take it seriously. Even if at the beginning it was a bit difficult for them to set up this routine, really quickly they did. And also, I must say, I think teenagers, everybody, but also kids and teenagers at the beginning, they need at some point to have some rules on their lives. And at that moment, in the context they have absolutely no no limit, no boundary. They can do whatever they want. And I think they also was really beneficial for them to have this small place where we were actually being strict with them. I think they actually enjoyed it at the end.
Okay. I have like two more questions. This is my first question, and my second one. Did you have any refugee among them that has mental issues, maybe depressed, maybe because of where they were coming from? Did they come from war countries? Like what countries? What was their experience before coming? What's like? I would like to know that as well.
I think we did. We would never ask about that because we also didn't really see ourselves as the people who should. But most likely there were students that were from war countries and that had traumatic experiences as well. What we mainly tried to do was really create a safe space in class, which also I think meant that they could be themselves mostly, and it was not, like you need to now sit down and be very typical and do this. So we kind of met them where they were at because of the way we constructed the project. And I think that helped in sort of facilitating for teenagers that were also sometimes maybe depressed or in a different mindset, but they could go at their own speed. So we didn't really add any extra stress or expectations, or because that was not the aim of the project.
Plus, like,
okay.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I really appreciate. I am so much interested in this because I also with my dissertation, my thesis topic for my master's is on refugee. So that is why I'm much interested in this. Thank you so much for this like privilege. I really appreciate. And lastly, I want to ask again, please, is there going to be like a certification of attendance for the attendees?
No, certification. No, we didn't really.
We didn't plan for this, but we can keep in touch. The truth is that this is not exactly a training, but you can definitely mention it as a participant, and we have the list of participants, but we didn't prepare a certificate.
Okay, okay. Thank you
I'll
very
think
much.
about it.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Gift. And Joanne?
I just wanted to ask about the languages. I'm sure you
Mhm.
must have many people from many different countries speaking many different languages. How did you, which language did you teach in, or how did you manage that? Thank you.
Well, that's one of the main problems we actually had to face. When we prepared the course, we thought of making the classes so practical that language was not really needed. It was proved unfeasible the second day. So we would teach in English, then we would have someone from Habibi.Works that is actually here right now translating to Arabic. We would try to find someone to translate for Persian as well. That was more tricky usually, but at some point, the students themselves that could speak English and Persian would do the translation. And then if we had more languages, sometimes it would become so tricky that we even lost students because of that. Because if we had, at some point we had Arabic, Persian, and two different kinds of Kurdish, nobody could speak Kurdish in our team. None of the Kurdish speakers could speak English. So it became almost impossible to handle. So yeah, language in this context is something we didn't really find a way to go around, but to
Not
have translated.
completely, yeah. I think partly we did, also because I think the part where the students would actually translate for each other in a way worked quite well. For one, because it forced us to use very simple language. And that also helped in explaining it in a way that was actually not sort of just throwing in words and concepts, but you actually had to explain the full concept because they would know some English, but they wouldn't know the word for photosynthesis, for example. So you really had to explain the full concept in order for them to translate it to their friends. So I think that
we would also and then we would also get to know if they had actually understood or not, because if the translator couldn't translate, then the concepts were not going through.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we were also really lucky to have a kid who could speak both languages, who felt nice translating, but that's not always the case. And that's why we also lost some students with other languages, because having this lack is not always the case.
No, and even though the project was really practical, if someone really doesn't speak any language that is provided, yeah, it would get really difficult. I think with a basic, like even with a small level of English, they could still, sort of at least enjoy part of it, because they might not understand the full depth of the things that we would say, but because the exercises are so practical, they would still get something out of it. But if someone really doesn't speak any language, so they also don't understand what they're supposed to be doing, it's tricky. Yeah, and we didn't really solve it.
Yeah, in that sense, I think some of the projects that we had in the lesson plan could work for these kind of students if they are motivated enough. Like as Elske said, maybe they don't understand everything, but if they really feel like going to the class and they understand some of it, it's fine. So we have some of the projects that could have worked like this, like the first one with the shapes in construction. But then there were others in which where it's the case with the Kurdish kids, which was not so much practical, but there was some theory involved. And then even if they understood something, they just lost the interest, because being sitting down for 1 hour listening to gibberish, it's not really motivating.
I have to say that by reading your book, at the rules, there were some rules that are very specific and clear. So you wouldn't use mobile phones during the class. The mobile phones went on the box.
Yes, and the phone box.
They were locked. So the truth is that my teaching hands-on science to teenagers, I don't have so many programs as you did, a whole year of monthly projects. But we have some projects that are like 3 sessions STEM activities, and there we don't know what we will encounter. Usually children, most of them don't speak English. So I have been using Google Translate with the Google Lens. So using a presentation with written things in English with big letters, so they can scan them and translate through their phone. It works, but when there are different levels of language, there's a conflict because some kids might be interested or have, be engaged because of the Google Lens and because they understand. Some other kids might find it boring to wait for the others. So it's not very easy when you have all those different levels. If nobody speaks English, then it's quite equal. If some are more advanced than others, so it's a big challenge. It is a big challenge every time, the language. And it was a really good thing that you had translation. Thank you, Saad. So it was really important. Saad, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, it's just if I may add, I think also it did create some connections between some students, at least from the classes I saw, that some connections between students that in other contexts might have never really connected. Some people who didn't really speak the same languages, but they kind of were on the same level of English. So they kind of struggled together, and it just created these bonds between unlikely, or let's say created some unlikely partnerships.
That's a really good side effect, I think. And it's really
and
beautiful.
in that sense, we would even try to force these partnerships. Whenever we had an activity that didn't require language at all, we would pair people that could not speak. So they would have never worked together before, and then they were forced to use the small English they had, the small Greek they had, to find out how to communicate. And we had really, really good connections through that kind of working. So we also use an advantage on not being able to speak the same language sometimes.
Yeah, they were really good at that also, at communicating, actually. If you just, said, okay, now good luck, go ahead. They were really good at finding solutions for that as well.
That's really nice. So no technology involved, no internet involved. And now that you said that about the teamwork, pairing and putting different young people together to work together, this had challenges. I can understand from the book. I can understand also from my experiences. Sometimes it goes amazing, sometimes it goes bad, and it's all in the same class. You can have teams that work really well together and teams that are like, no, I don't want this. So about that, in connection to the language, did you, at your first cycling, did you put the students together according to their language skills, or was it another way of doing the teams?
Well, I actually think we didn't thought about the languages when making the teams, but it actually came out with people that could speak the same language. But I think it was not the base on our decisions.
No, it really depended on the exercise mostly. Because if it would be an exercise where they had to look for information online, then we would put people of the same language together because it just made more sense. But in very practical exercises, we just thought, okay, this could be a fun match.
But in the first project, it did happen that the three teams could speak to each other within the teams, like in the construction one, in the first one.
Okay. And you also did presentations at the end of every month, every cycle theme. The kids had to present what they have done in English or in the help with someone translating. So
depending on the student, some did it in English, but others also did it in their own language, and then we would have translation with it, because with the presentation, English was not the main aim of it. The main aim was to kind of get them in the habit of understanding how to share their knowledge, basically, and preparing a presentation, being in front of, a group of people and telling what you did. So if that would be easier for them in their own language, we also allowed that. It was not it didn't really matter.
But then
Okay.
at some point, even students with no really high level English would ask us to do it in English, just to test their own knowledge, because they were also really interested in learning English.
It was a
Yeah.
good opportunity. Yes. Yes, it must have been.
Yeah, and then we also tried to get the families of the students to come and see the presentation, so they would see what the students were doing during the week, like during the month with us. And also we would try to bring other possible praise for the project to see what we were doing and maybe join for the next one.
Other potential students, you said, Joram, like bring
Yeah.
So it was like a teaser for the next
Yeah.
students.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Yeah, you have to advertise, of course. Thank you so much, Joanne. May the
Yeah,
force
thank
be
you so much.
with everyone. That's so lovely. So you used a lot of challenges also in your classes. So you had to, in order to motivate the students to participate. How did this work? How was it?
Yeah, we thought just as practical activities, and then the students themselves, they became a little bit competitive at some point, and they just called them challenges. But they were mainly practical activities, like the one I mentioned before with the mirrors, for example. We asked them to find out who was hiding behind a wall, but nobody could move, and they could just move a mirror. So by doing it, they learn how the reflection of the mirrors go in angles. Or I don't know, the first one we did was building a tower with straws so the bottle could hold on it. So it was just a practical activity, but we turned it into a challenge by saying, okay, the one who holds the most weight, they win.
And we didn't even like.
It was like a competition. That was risky.
Like at some point,
Yeah.
for example, with the tower against each other and with the light just against us, like, are you able to do this or not? Let's check.
But I think also with that, because it was not really our idea to make it into a competition. It just kind of happened because it was like, okay, which tower is strongest, fun. But then the students became very competitive. And at some point we were also like, not sure if this still is like serving our goal.
Purpose,
because they would get a little bit disappointed if they were not the best and all of that. So then we kind of also, one of the projects where we saw that happening for the exam, we basically made it into a common challenge, where they had to work together in order to sort of solve the exam. So it was not about who's best and who's first or whatever, but they all had to basically do their small part in it in order for it to work. Because I think at that point, it got a little bit out of hand.
Well, yes, it's very engaging, but yeah, it has to be used wisely, I guess. And at some point, you realize, oh, maybe we can withdraw the competitive part, and but engagement is very important. So sometimes we make sacrifices for engagement.
Yeah, it's difficult to find a balance between the two things. Like they can become very competitive, and scale that down can be difficult. But yeah, you need it to provide motivation for them. So finding the balance among everything is complicated.
It's true. And so we have talked about teamwork, competition, and challenges. I said earlier before we started the meeting that I really loved the field trips, that it was, one could consider it a bit behavioral to give, a gift for someone to learn. But I think it was really incorporated to the whole program, and your field trips were themed by each month, each cycle. So you did a field trip, you studied the movement and the motion and the transfer of movement in bodies, and then you went bowling.
Yeah.
So yes, transfer of motion. That was a really cool field trip. I think everybody must have enjoyed it very much.
They did.
I think everybody enjoyed all the field trips. And to be honest, like our idea was to make a trip every time that was really, really well connected to the topic that we had done,
Yes.
like something really educational. The problem was that finding the place and then being able to get there, getting a response from the people was not always the easiest thing. Maybe because we were in the middle of nowhere, but it was not always easy to find a place that was so much related to the topic. With the bowling, it was a bit of a stretch, but it still worked.
Yeah, it worked. Yeah, and I think also it was, at least I was quite aware that, giving someone a gift for something that you would like them to intrinsically, be motivated about, is maybe tricky, but I think our motivation was more to make sure they at least gave it a chance, so that it would, in the first classes when they didn't really know what the project was about yet, to just give them that extra reason to keep coming. And then you also saw it with the students that stayed, like the trip was really not the most important reason for them to stay at all. And I think the other thing was that the students, they were all in the camp, and they didn't usually go out very far or to like different places. So it was also an opportunity to show them different sides of the country, because they mostly had been in the camp or maybe in the city, but that was kind of it. So we also kind of wanted to broaden their experience and view of the place they were living in.
That's so beautiful. And it actually, the gift wasn't just a reward. It was actually a part of the class. So it was really a nice, very good idea, and hard to manage the logistics and to get permission from parents and all that. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Would love to hear more questions. There is one message here. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's very kind.
That's very nice of you, Montar. And I would like to also add about the gender aspect. If there were issues that you faced for girls, maybe, I guess, focusing on girls, if you had issues with attending or participating in some of the classes, since there were adolescent girls, and sometimes we find differences in how the families work on that part.
Yeah, for us, maybe the biggest challenge was to bring girls into the class. We actually knew that from the beginning. So before we started, we scouted students in camp. We went to their houses, to their family houses. We introduced ourselves to the parents. We told the parents what we were doing. We invited them over to the class. And still we got one girl in the first class. But at the end, I think it was 60%, 70% of the class were girls. So we managed to work on that side, but it was very difficult at the beginning to get them to come.
Yeah, but I think the base of trust that we had already through Habibi.Works with the families did really help us, because they already, the parents knew us also from within Habibi.Works, so they had worked with us as well. And I think there was a certain level of trust that they had in us, so they were sort of allowing their daughters to come, because they trusted us to kind of do the right thing, I guess. And also that we were at some point, actually, we were very flexible in this. So at some point, the mother of one of our students joined for a full cycle, so she could also come, which was actually hilarious. She was a very engaged student, so it was a lot of fun. But yeah, if that helped, then we were like, okay, why not? Come and join. It's fine with us.
That was always a challenge to my experience as well. But sometimes it was also the girls that might not want to come. They weren't used to being around boys, but it's not absolute, and it's not the same for every family, and definitely not the same for every culture. But yes, it's
but
not
that's true. There are some girls that are just not really comfortable, and we couldn't push them to come. We invited, there are some girls that come to mind with this topic. We invited them over every single time. We couldn't do much more than that. They had to be the one doing the step because we were not going to do a just female class because it was not what we were doing. And eventually some of them joined. Like there was the case of one specific girl that would not come because she was just extremely shy. And a friend of her, who was also a girl and who was coming, brought her in. She took her under her wing. And then eventually she opened up. She started working with boys in the class. Like there was a huge development on her on that side through the project and through the help of her friend. But yeah, like she had to be the one doing the first step.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's where this creating a safe space was also really important. And our classes are obviously really small, and us being 2 teachers there, like we did observe a lot of what was happening. And yeah, we were very strict with also behavioral rules. Like there was no space for comments or whatever, because not only on this topic, but obviously this topic was a sensitive one. And we really wanted to make sure that the space was safe. So yeah, but it was not always easy for us to also understand what was happening, because if it's in another language and it's like a side comment that someone makes, you don't always understand, the context or like, yeah.
Well, yes, but being a safe space doesn't mean that nothing happens, but it means that
Yeah.
No, of course.
also when something happens, the students have the ability to come and the trust to come to you and say that this happened. So
Yeah.
we can't prevent everything, but definitely if there is a democratic discussion, it's so important, and it creates a space safe like yours. That's so cool. So I think the time is running out. So if you have any questions, but don't be shy and raise your hand or just speak, or else I guess we will try to provide the book at some libraries, I think, as Science United project from our work at the festival as well. And if you would like to share anything, please do so now, because we said it's going to be up to now. And we shouldn't keep people too much. Erika is here. Erika, are you here? Erika? I hope she's here, actually. Erika?
I think
Come on,
Erika has left.
Or maybe she's not connected. Yeah, she had so much work. But if someone wants to speak, we would love to hear you. Mimi from
Hello,
Habibi.Works, Mimi.
Hi. I'm curious if we can get the recording of this presentation.
Yes, you can. We will treat it, we will try to blur everyone's names except for ours and put it on YouTube, I think. We'll see, but you can definitely have access, Mimi. Thank you so much. And to say that Habibi.Works it's a real amazing space, and it's open to everyone. It's right next to the camp and available for people to learn, to evolve, to get out of the camp. It's a beautiful space. Really, thank you so much for all the work you have been doing all these years.
Thank you very much for providing the space for Joram and Elske and the project. It's really great. Thanks.
Thank you, Mimi. So we can call it a night if there is not anything else that somebody wants to add. But of course, we are available through social media, our email, anything you might need, and of course, Joram, can you put the link from the Amazon for the book?
Yeah.
So if you can copy
It's
that
on
link.
English. It's available in English and in Spanish, but I will share the English version because I think it makes more sense.
Okay, yes.
So
And
top tip there, try to find the Amazon which gives you the book cheapest, because basically if you're, for example, in the Netherlands, if you order it from the .com, it's much more expensive than if you order it from the .nl. So there's a difference in price. So it's worth like finding out.
It's true, that's true.
Yeah,
We
I
tried
think
the
the first
Germany
page
one.
that appears for me is the German one, where it's at
Yeah,
20 euros. I
for
think should be
Europe.
the right price.
Yeah.
And we will try to purchase it for some public libraries here in Greece. And we'll let you know. Oh, wait. It's always coming as a private message, but I will share with everyone.
Okay.
So thank you so much for coming, everyone. Thank you so much, Joram and Elske, for your amazing work and
Thank
for
you.
sharing it with us. We are very lucky, and we look forward to your comments. Anyone who wants to comment the science projects at the Science United Festival, please reach out. I know that you want to. Thank you so much. And our student teams would love to hear a lot of encouraging comments. So if you have encouragement and positive things to say, this is the place for science. And we are going to have a battery, I think, from lemons, as you did. And
Right.
so we
Good
have a
luck
lot
with
of
that.
magnet projects. I don't know if you, I don't remember if you did magnet projects. Did you do?
Not so.
I don't
Not so
think
much.
so.
Oh, you're gonna love those magnet projects that our students are preparing. You're gonna love them. They're really, it's unique. So thank you everyone so much. Have a beautiful night. Happy Easter to the western part of Europe. We are looking forward to ours in a month or something, more than a
All
month. And please stay in touch, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you. Bye.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Kalinichta.
Kalinichta. Oh, you can read.
Bedankt voor de mooie
Can
lessen.
read Greek, yes.
Thank you, Mom.
Thank you all.
It was, I didn't know it was Anna.
Hi.
Katinka,
Hello.
you managed
I'm
to
so
join.
angry
That's
that I
so
just
nice.
joined really late.
That's
Oh,
fine,
completely
Kat.
forgot.
it's okay. We have a recording. Good night, Amalia. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to leave you guys. See you. It was very nice briefly seeing you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Same.
much.
Bye, Joram and Elske. Thanks a lot.
Bye bye,
Thanks for
Mimi.
being
Thank
there,
you,
Mimi.
Mimi.
Speak to you
Bye.
soon. All right. I think I'll sign off as well. Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Katrina.
Time for us
much.
to leave
I'm
as well.
quite
Thank you, Katerina.
stopping the recording. Thank you. Have a beautiful night, and we'll be in touch. I
And we stay in
really
touch
love
for
this.
the commenting on the projects.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so
in
much.
case of any questions, just also if people have questions, just forward them.
Yes, I
Yeah,
will.
you can send it through email.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a beautiful
Anaya, we
night.
go. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.